So we seem to have changed things up a bit for the second vlog. We've added back the echo that I used to have, and we've improved, in exchange, we've improved the look of the room a bit. There's wallpaper that's supposed to go back there eventually, and the red gobos that you saw in the last video were actually taken back the day after I recorded the first video, last week's video. Big thanks to Jason at Pro Audio LA for letting me rent those gobos and actually have some semblance of nice sounding Twitch streams for a couple of weeks. But I kind of wanted to use this as a way to sort of chronicle for myself, mainly because I tell this story a lot, and I guess tell you guys who have not heard this story before tell you a little bit about myself and what my career before all of this was. So way back when, I started getting interested in design around high school. And this was when I joined my AV club. And AV is something I've always been interested in. I was actually just talking to Jen a couple of days ago about the how interested I was in how early on it was when I got interested in my first computer. We had a 386, but that's a story I can save for another vlog. Because we had a closed circuit television system at BRHS, there were a couple of shows that they would display every Wednesday and every Friday while I was going there. Of course, during the day they would use it for announcements. There was there's PowerPoint and stuff with current events and such. But every Wednesday and Friday morning during homeroom, there were two programs. The first was Weather Center Live, which was a weather program to tell you about the week's weather, which was, I guess, kind of weird considering we were competing with actual weather stations you were probably watching when you were leaving school. The Friday program was BRHS News, obviously a news program about the school, but we had two anchors and a full team. We had a blue screen. We had a teleprompter system, a pretty janky teleprompter system. We had a complete back room filled with my, the first mixers that I played with, the first video editing that I'd ever done. So as I got into AV Club, I would spend my lunchtime there. I'd spend my after school days there when I wasn't doing anything for my other clubs. And I really started getting interested in the weather program because it was so graphically oriented, and honestly, it was a little bit ugly. Design never really came natural to me. It was something that was more nurtured, something that I taught myself, and that's sort of like the thread that runs through all of this, is that throughout my design career, I've been self-taught. So I got really interested in the weather program around the time where a guy named Shin Meng was the weatherman at the time, and I actually did the graphics and scripts for him. And that's when I started working with Photoshop. I think it was around Photoshop 6-ish. So every week I'd create new graphics, and eventually in my junior year of high school, I became the weatherman.
First, let's get right to it. Like the new redesign? Anyway, temperatures right now are pretty mild for this time of year, with a high right now at 36.
And I was a weatherman there for 2 years, and I ran the graphical end. I kept doing that. I loved AccuWeather.com and Weather.com way back in the day, just to kind of not only sort of understand what the graphics meant, but also to emulate, my local weather stations and provide a really good-looking program to my peers at the high school. I dress up every week. Well, most weeks. There are actually a couple of videos on YouTube that are secret that I've shown my Twitch community a couple of times, but I'll open a couple of them up and place links in the description below. But through there, I joined a place called Fong.com, and I got into photo manipulation. One thing turns into the next. I eventually met Jen through a friend when I was moderating a forum that I found afterwards called Something Leet. And I just kept continuing to design and teach myself. As I got into college, I started to blog a little bit. I started to play with Flash, and I had a couple of Flash sites for AvalonStar.com when that was the thing that I would redesign every 6 months. That's a big introduction to sort of what went from a hobby to what was 12 years of my life. I went to Savannah, Georgia after I graduated college, thinking I would get into some business management position. I majored in entrepreneurship, graduated with a bachelor's in entrepreneurship from Johnson & Wales University, and failed to find a job that I liked. Went back home for the summer, and one thing led to another. And I talked to my dad. He kind of knew through a couple of choice interactions we had when I was younger. One being that I'm not playing on the computer, I'm actually doing something and making some money on the side with a check from from Bridgewater Township, who was my first client while I was still in high school. And so he told me that, why don't you look for a job in web design? And that kind of, I guess, took me off guard a little bit because I never actually considered doing it as a job. I always really had fun with it. And this was when like the beginnings of the standards movement was coming about. And I started following people. I started commenting on blogs. I started redesigning Avalon Star in ways that were noticed by other people in the community. So I started getting to know a lot of people in the community. Act 3 of this video, because if I keep going with this, I could talk for hours on it, and I guess I can save this for something else later, is that I actually applied for LinkedIn in 2005 after I graduated. And so I headed up to Silicon Valley. I stayed with a friend named Evan, and I interviewed there. It was the first ever sort of complex interview I've been through. I had to redesign the profile page as my little test run. I did that. It went pretty well. But that night, I actually went to LinkedIn and found a listing for a not so known site called Facebook. Well, I guess if you were a college student at the time, you'd know what Facebook is. And they were looking for a designer. So I'm like, okay, I had used their messaging system, and I guess that's the most I've ever used LinkedIn to this day, to contact Matt Kohler, who was the one who put out the listing. Matt emailed me back. I guess it wasn't a call, it was an email. I mean, we didn't have smartphones back then. Or I had a flip phone. I forgot what I had. I forgot what I had before my first iPhone, but that's besides the point. Matt Kohler got in contact with me and said, we're looking for a designer. When can I interview you? I'm like, well, I'm leaving back for LA tomorrow at 5. And is there any way I can, see you get together for some coffee? We went to a bagel shop before I leave. And he said, yeah, let's do it. And I went to Palo Alto. I drove a rental car to Palo Alto the next day and had my stuff packed up in the back. And I met him at a Noah's Bagels off of University Ave in Palo Alto. That was when Facebook had their office on Emerson Street, and that's one of the offices that people don't usually refer to when they talk about Facebook. They usually talk about the next office, which was, I think it was 151 University. I forget, but it was a multi-floor building, or 2-floor. We had 2 floors in the building on University Ave. But this was on Emerson. This was the one before, and I spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours with him, explored the office. It was a quintessential startup. They had desks strewn everywhere. They tried to fit the main room with as many desks as possible. The outside, the perimeter was lined up with little offices that were, I guess, rarely used. I think everybody liked working in that area, and obviously Mark Zuckerberg worked at a desk as well in his white T-shirt, shorts, and Adidas slippers. I still have the pair he gave the bunch of us before I left the company. So, I'm sorry this is getting so long. So, I went back home. The interview went well. I went back home. By that Monday, I got an offer from both Facebook and LinkedIn. Facebook's offer was higher, and it seemed like the more exciting company to work for. So I accepted their offer. And all of a sudden, my hobby turned into my first job out of college. And to this day, I still kind of like look at it as like it's a story of luck and skill that I didn't really perceive that I had at the time. I was just really passionate, and I think that's something that a lot of people that are like me, that I can empathize with. You know, the way I look at my career, the way I look at my skill. You know, my self-deprecation. I was very self-deprecating 13 years ago. And so I would tell this story and be like, well, yeah, I was lucky. I happened to find the listing on LinkedIn while interviewing for LinkedIn, and then interviewed and got the job. But, you know, Matt hired me for a reason. He never told me why. But I can suspect one is because I reached out and was interested and had used it. I think Johnson Wales University, my alma mater, barely got Facebook before I left college. And that there was some skill and potential there. There are so many other stories I can talk about when it comes to Facebook, and I don't know how timely it is, given how Facebook is viewed in this day and age. Maybe these are YouTube videos I should have recorded when YouTube came out. 2007 or 2008 video about my history of Facebook might have been a more fitting year or time period to do so. It's really kind of hard to find a moral for this, and I'm having a hard time doing it, but at the same time, these aren't supposed to sort of have morals. It's just sort of a story that I'm telling. But a lot of my life has sort of been this, like, I don't know how I got here. I don't know how lucky, I was to get the positions that I got and to get to the place that I am today. And I look down at myself at not being noticed by the person next to me or the person above me. And, telling stories like this and kind of thinking to myself while saying them, synchronously, that, wow, like, yeah, there must have been something there. I was good. And I was pretty good at what I did, and I only kept getting better, and I just had this passion to do so. Well, what's really cool about all of this is just mainly it's a good story to tell. It's a good memory to have, because the Facebook in 2006, going to BRHS and being the weatherman, being yelled at during graduation because it was raining and they blamed it on me because I was the guy that told them the weather. They are good moments I had in my life, and no matter what happens with these figures or these companies going forward, I can at least sit in a chair or look at a camera and sort of reminisce about what I contributed and how that experience contributed to me. Because I've been told many times I've lived a strange life, and the more and more that time passes by, I kind of agree with those statements. So that was long, and I hope that the echo did not bother you too much, but within 2 or 3 videos, we hope to have this entire place done, and I'm really excited to have that. This topic was actually inspired by or suggested by one of my Twitch community members, so thank you, Steve, for that. If there's something that you'd like to hear me talk about, or something you're interested in, or you'd like me to dig deeper into anything I've talked about today, please leave it in the comments below, or reach out to me on Twitter or through the Discord. Links are also below. This was fun, and I can't wait to do more of these. I don't know why I never thought of doing story time before. It's definitely a viable medium or show type for this channel in the future. So I look forward to whatever you guys have to tell me, and I would love to have a conversation with you guys in the comments below or in the Discord, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, my friends.